All right, ladies and gentlemen, I can officially say this time, this is episode 11.
Why?
All my insecurities, all my insecurities are gone for a fact because I did all the editing. This is episode 11.
But don't say what day it is because that's what messed me up
that's
last
fair. Yeah,
time.
yeah. We won't mess
Like
with
the
we won't mess with months or dates. But this is episode 11. So all of our viewers, sorry for the confusion on the last one and my insecurities. I apologize. But with today's episode, I'm really excited. So a few conversations ago, Dave and Kara, like we were talking about like my council of four, right? Just these four people that I've placed in my life strategically who just have a really like a really special place in my life. I joked around how Kirk is the dad, and then my mom, obviously my mom, and then I have two brothers in this situation. There's Joe Gutierrez, and then my other one is just one of my best friends in the entire world, Tom Stinkin' Fulton in the house, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, Tom.
Where's the clap sound?
Thanks for having me.
I'll have to insert that this time.
Edit that one in. And the crowds rejoice.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Well, dude, thank you so much for hopping on this one. So just a little bit of background because I don't want to fangirl over you like I did on Kirk's episode.
I'm just glad I made the top 4.
Yeah.
Wait, like the MySpace list? He's up there. He's up there.
He was really upset when we did the dating episode. He's like, bruh, the fact that you didn't even call me, I was like, but I strategically, it wasn't just like let me make this up to you, but no, like I was strategically because this is a conversation I wanted to have. But before we get into that, so just
he's not lying. I put a comment. I commented on the post, and I ended up deleting it and then just sending it to him directly because I was like, that's too petty to put it out in the world that I'm that butthurt about it. But then it's on a story. I'm like, bro, for real? Like, how are you not gonna have me in on that?
We should totally do another one. We can do another one.
I mean, I'm gonna say this because I can't edit it out. I don't know if I will, but he's single, ladies. Just saying.
Yeah.
We could have had that
teacher.
as the post right before.
No, yeah.
Like the people
Like
were.
The single ladies.
This
There's
message
like
is
a
brought
nice
to you
photo
by.
of him. He's like this.
Those don't exist.
He's super handsome right now. Like, not that Tom isn't always handsome, but like he dressed for the occasion today. I was impressed. Yes, sir. Every girl's crazy for a sharp dressed man.
He walked in and he had the Big Show vibe right now. I was like, dude, what's up? Okay. It's probably because I'm sitting too, but
his voice sounds like oil over leather. But anyway, I'm trying to help you. I'm trying to help you out. I don't know if it's helping, but I'm trying to help you out, Tom.
Better than nails on a chalkboard.
So what's crazy is that me and Tom, we have a connection in a different way. So one of my childhood friends was John Preston. He lives like 3 houses down. And that was one of his close friends growing up.
Wow, okay.
So I have stories about John Preston jumping his truck. And he has stories about John Preston jumping his truck.
Same truck. Yep.
So it's crazy that truck lived as long as it did. So John, if you're out there, I hope that truck's still living and you're still going. I see you driving down the street, but it's crazy,
funny.
huh? Small world.
Yeah. So Tom is a teacher at Desert Christian Academy, known simply as Fulton on campus. Dare I say is a living legend. That's not fanboying. That's just what it is. Like, is a living legend on campus. Honestly, when I stepped on to DC campus, he's literally who I've kind of, copied. There's a better word for that though. But at least just modeled after was Tom's teaching style. And I mean, it paid off because Tom was really the one who encouraged me. Not that curriculum isn't important. He stressed that obviously teaching curriculum is important, but the importance of relationship and really like just, again, modeling myself after him. Like it helped me so much as a teacher and really just building relationships on campus. He's an amazing teacher, an amazing dad, has a 14 or 15-year-old now.
She's 15.
15-year-old daughter.
Closer to 16 than 15 at this point.
Yeah.
Wow.
So if you guys, what I'm saying is, without putting too much out there, if you guys need help, that's the man to go to.
I got questions.
But no. So Tom, like, I don't want to. I want you to tell this story, but to let the audience know kind of what we've got going on with today's episode, something that I think is near and dear to my heart, not necessarily because I personally experienced, but it's something that our students at DCA, like, I hate to use this word, but I mean, almost like, I mean, it's a really bad problem, like for some of our students, like just broken homes, right? Divorce, and just watching just the emotional toll that just in my classroom, like I have 2 classes, roughly averaging around like I think 40 kids altogether, and just hearing their experiences and their stories and their struggles, you know, dealing with, you know, broken homes and divorced parents and step parents and all that, all the things that come with that, you know, it's something that I don't believe church addresses very well. And the reason I say that is because there's a lot of shame attached to it. And it kind of like, the audience won't hear the prayer that we prayed beforehand, but like obviously divorce is something that breaks God's heart. But it's not something beyond his redemptive powers. And seeing your story and you're just hearing your story, and not just hearing your story, but hearing how you ministered to other people with your story is super encouraging. And I think it's something that needs to be heard, to not only remove shame that I think people are holding when it comes to this particular thing, but also to give hope for people who are either, you know, maybe on the cusp of it, maybe right in the middle of it, or even, you know, 10 years down the road from it, you know. But anyway, I think we can just start this off with Tom. Tell us your story, brother.
Yeah, for sure. No, you're right. Divorce is one of a couple of topics that I think the church, unfortunately, does a pretty poor job at. I would say sex is another one that the church does not do a good job of teaching, especially the youth. And, you know, for a while there, you had divorce rates hovering around 50%. I'm pretty sure if you looked it up now, it's above that. The Christian church divorce rate was a little bit lower for a while, and now I'm pretty sure it's the same, if not more. And I think there's several reasons for that, but like marriage is hard, you know.
100%.
It is hard,
100%.
and the church does not prepare people for that very well. It's like, this is the goal, is to find this person, and you know, for me, growing up in the church, growing up in a Christian home where, you know, my grandparents were married almost 60 years. My own parents are going on 50 something years married. And so that was kind of the model for me. And so growing up in that, you know, going to Christian college, finding a Christian woman, getting married super young. And I did all the right things. Like, I was a virgin when I got married. So was my wife. And, you know, we went to church. We both grew up in church. We did all these things that the Bible says you're supposed to do. And then our marriage was so hard. It was just so challenging, this stuff. Even in premarital counseling, like, you know, the pastor who walked us through was just like, finances and whatever. I'm like, okay, but what about all these other things that you didn't talk us through that just suck tremendously in our marriage right now? And we just weren't great communicators, you know, and that made it harder. Just, you know, honest, open communication is so important in marriage. And it's hard to be vulnerable. And in the Word, when it talks about the Lord being the groom and the church being the bride, we miss that piece. That it's that open vulnerability that makes it work. Like being laid bare before the Lord as the bride. That's what it's supposed to be. That when I come to the Lord in prayer, that, you know, as my, you know, spouse or whatever in that allegory, is that the right allegory metaphor?
You got it.
Whatever. Okay. That
we're teachers, we know things.
Yeah.
I would have never used that word in my life, but you go ahead. I was like, sure, sounds nice.
But yeah, that open, honest communication, it's our humanity and our sin gets in the way, and that just messes marriage up. So,
well, you're doing all the check mark stuff, you know what I mean? And then, but I still have other questions.
I read a statistic too, right before you got here. What was like over 70% of the couples who got married didn't realize the commitment involved in marriage. Like you said, they make it seems so easy. Like, oh, you did all these things, it should work. And it's like, they didn't realize how much commitment was involved.
Yeah. And the part that gets left out is you're taking two sinful human beings and asking them to merge. And like, if you're not talking through the stuff you're struggling with, and it just, there's breakdowns in it. And that vulnerable commitment, it gets left out in the premarital piece, and it sucks. I would imagine not everywhere, but in mine, my premarital counseling, there were just some pieces missing, and I would say that's probably more common than not, unfortunately. But in my journey, we were young, we worked through some things, we had a child, and then it's just survival at that point. When you start to have kids, it's like that infant toddler phase. You're trying to make it through the day to get to the end of the week.
The fan hits the poo-poo, or the poo-poo hits the fan, literally.
Yeah. And, especially if you have kids that aren't sleeping, or, whatever your baby is like.
It's just extra stress on top of already a stressful situation.
Yeah. And you kind of put your marriage issues to the side to focus on the child. And we did that. We did that for probably close to a decade. And, year 11, 12 is when this stuff started bubbling to the surface for us. And, did our best to work through it, did our best to communicate. And I remember so distinctly, as I was just kind of in the midst of my marriage falling apart, having this rant, like spent 10 minutes just talking about, if my marriage fails, God's not real, the Bible's fake, like all this is garbage because I did it all the way that I was supposed to. And so if this fails, like God's not real, and yada, yada, yada. And Kirk Scott, as in a very Kirk Scott way, as he just lets me sitting there like,
just let it out.
Yeah. lets me finish. And, I'm huffing and puffing, all pissed off. And Kirk just leans back in his chair. Your marriage is an idol. And that's all I said. And it was that scripture of truth, just dividing bone from marrow. And, oh man, that word just cut me to my core. And I went, oh, you're right.
And just to really illustrate that point home, if you don't mind me jumping in, just to really drive that point home, because for you, like, you were fighting to maintain and to maintain that marriage. And granted, I guess to a degree where it was hurtful to you versus being beneficial to you.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those things. There was a little feeling of conditional love more than unconditional love in my situation. So it was like, these are the things that I needed to do. And it fed the stereotype, it's always the husband's fault. Right. Yeah. And so what do I need to do different? And so doing all those kinds of things. But really it was my heart condition where in loving my wife, I took that Ephesians verse of, husbands, love your wife. And I put her up here. And that's what Kirk so lovingly pointed out. And my jaw dropped, all of my anger went away. And it was just this very spiritual moment where the Lord and I connected to like, oh man, you're right. Like, I've got this thing flipped. Because in that Ephesians verse, if you back up, it starts with submission to Christ. And so your marriage has zero chance if both parties aren't coming in submission to Christ. And it takes that to work. If somebody's got it flipped, you're going to have issues, because a wife can't submit to her husband if she's not first submissive to Christ. And she's not going to want to submit to a husband who's not submissive to Christ. There's no reason to follow that. So if both parties are submitting to Christ first, then you have this marriage that works well until our sin and humanity gets in the way. And then we have to go back. What's the Jesus part that I'm missing here?
And to reiterate that, because I think there's some without because like I can't just be up here saying like I was the greatest husband ever, but like I think there's some boys pretending to be men in a marriage who need to hear that aspect one more time. That what is there to submit to from a wife's perspective, if you yourself are not submitted to Jesus, like what's the point? Like I think that's something that
because as men, like, what are we following? How are we leading? Because if I'm not following Jesus, then there's no reason for anyone in my family to follow me anywhere. Like I'm just a sinful man at that point. Like, what am I modeling for my kids? Right. And because if I'm doing, when you look at the context of that verse, the call to love your wife as Christ loved the church, I interpreted that as sacrifice. So I just sacrificed myself. Like, I gave up my personality. I gave up my hobbies. I gave up all my stuff to love my wife. And I was like, oh, I'm doing the marriage thing. But in that losing of myself, my wife is like, who's this guy? That like, you're not even the same person anymore. And it was just that for me, I thought I was doing it well, you know? But back to the story, you know, we get to year 13. We had come off of what I thought was our best year of marriage ever, and kind of got blindsided with, you know, this isn't working. We've been trying, like, we're young enough that we can figure it out. And so, you know, agreed to part ways, sat with a pastor and struggling through that because I'm going, like, I don't know what to do. Like, how much do I keep fighting for this thing? And, you know, pastor basically told me if a wife is trying to leave, you let them leave. And so that was a hard thing to do, but it was, you know, she had to do what she had to do. And so now when people come to me like, hey, we're having marriage issues, whatever, I just encourage, do everything you can on your side to make it work. You know, because it's, again, you're entering into marriage with two people who are bringing their own stuff in, their own brokenness, their own sin, and it takes two to make it work.
During this time, did you have people that were saying, like, oh, what are you doing? Like, this is bad. Like, just keep going or hold on, even if...
Yeah, I think I felt bad for my ex-wife because her struggles were her struggles. Yeah. And, you know, she had a group of people that were encouraging her to, you know, do what you got to do. Yeah. And I don't fault those people. Like, you know, they loved her, they cared for her, and no one, like, wanted to see our marriage end. Like, I was a good guy. Like, it's not like I was abusive or, like, you know, and that for her was why she stayed in for so many years, because it was like, this is a good guy. And I remember something she said to me was like, I know I'm living someone's dream life, it's just not mine. And it's like,
that's crazy.
What do I do with
that? Hurt me right now. I was like,
Sorry, getting choked up. I'm really tired, but I got really choked up on that. I'm sorry, Tom. Golly, man.
You know, it would have been easy to be mad at that. Yeah. But, you know, number one, we have a kid. So it's, the focus becomes on that. How do we co-parent? How do we raise this child? And number two, like, there were so many people mad at her for me, I didn't need to be. That and in that, though, I had immense compassion just in what she was going through, knowing she was hurting somebody who was making every effort to be good to her. Yeah. Like, that's not easy either. And I think it was just in our youth, the inability to communicate where we were at and what was really going on in her heart. Like, it got to a point for her, I think, where it was just like, I just got to get out of this. Like, there's no fixing it at this point. There's too much junk.
And for you to be chasing after Christ during that, it sounds like you were able to bring that mournful of feeling for her through that. Because if not, you'd be like,
I feel like that's not the typical divorce story either. Yeah. Like, usually there is so much, like, anger and animosity, but you're like,
and we were, in fact, when we were going through and we're talking this morning, okay, what can we talk about or how can we do it? This was completely like a different view of what we were talking about, right?
What do you mean?
Like, when we were like, okay, normally it's like the beating, normally it's the abuse.
Because I was like, those are my grounds. Those are my grounds for divorce. Like, beaters and cheaters, you don't get to stay. Yeah. But, like, I couldn't imagine. That must have been so hard, not just for you to hear, but for her to say. To be like,
absolutely.
Because I couldn't, like, because you're a great guy too. So if I ever left you and I was just like, dude, you're perfect. It's really not you. But even when we've had issue, like, if I've been depressed or anything and I have to tell you, like, it's me, you know, it's not you, to, like, reassure you. But no, That must have been
yeah,
really hard.
it was.
absolutely.
We had some really hard conversations. Just 10 years too late. Is really.
Yeah,
what
I
it
was gonna ask if you think because you guys put it to the side for so long because you just focused on your daughter, if you think that kind of added to it was like the amount of time.
Yeah, because I think there were reservations early on for her that she just kind of talked herself out of, or had friends that were like, no, like this is normal to feel that way. Like, you know, he's a great guy, whatever. And, you know, in our story, we were friends first. Like I was that friend that she would bring her dating issues to. And I was friend zoned for a while and then kind of climbed my way out of that. And was like, yeah, you can get out of the friend zone. And then 13 years later, I'm like, no,
Turns out you're
you
still
really
just
can't.
a friend.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Never fully turned that corner. But yeah, I think we were just young and dumb, you know, and not to blame anyone or the church or anything. Just, I don't know that we were fully equipped as 20 somethings to navigate it well. And it was, we both had these expectations for what marriage was going to be, that when we got in it, it was like, oh, this is not what I thought. And neither of us really voiced that very well. And yeah, if there's not just some brutally honest conversations happening, especially early on in your marriage, it's just setting you up. Those are landmines that you bury for later that then blow up. And you know, I remember I had done something on an anniversary that just made her mad that she sat on for years.
What did you? Now I
just
have to
years.
know. Like, what did you do?
You didn't ask for her weight, did you?
You called her by her wrong name.
No,
I was saying the weight, but it's cool.
we did an anniversary trip to New York. And in that, we had this whole like night out plan. We went to Broadway show and all this stuff. And she had asked me to plan dinner. And so, you know, again, typical stereotypes, right? If I try to plan dinner as a man, and I'm like, where do you want to eat? Oh, I don't care. Pick somewhere. And then, but no, really, where do you want to eat? Because I know
I'm so
gonna
nervous.
I'm gonna go somewhere, and you're gonna be like, no, this isn't what I wanted. So you know, in hindsight, I feel like it was a no-win situation. But yeah, she wanted me to plan a dinner, and in my mind, I'm going, well, we'll just figure that out after the show. Like, we'll go and we'll see what's around, and I'll ask her what sounds.
A hot dog.
Yeah, I'm like, hey, what sounds
You
good?
take it to Sbarro, bro? Is that
It's New York. You know, there's got to be places, especially by Broadway.
I'm
Like,
thinking the same thing. Like, there's going to be some fancy stuff.
I know. You're getting a hot dog. That's all that's
there's
left.
got to
What do you
be
mean?
10 different restaurants that you can roll to. Not knowing Broadway's a really long street, y'all. So it's a long street. A lot of theaters on it. There are restaurants there. Some of them are farther away than others. So we like Uber to this, and we had a great show. Awesome show. And we get out, and it's, I don't know, like 9:30. And again, I'm thinking New York. Like, there'll be stuff open.
Yeah. The city that never sleeps.
Anything open, and anything open is like super far away. And now we're on Broadway when all the shows are getting out. So there's no Uber for an hour and a half.
Oh, man.
So we're dressed up, walking like 8 blocks. And the whole time I'm going, well, do you feel like this? Do you feel like this?
She don't feel like nothing right now.
And she's just pissed that I didn't have
hungry,
a plan.
and she's tired,
She's
and
hungry.
she's mad.
She's in heels, walking New York blocks, looking at her husband, going, "This clown did not make a reservation somewhere." And like, I get it. I ate my crow that night. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Like, you know, this is not what I had envisioned or planned.
Yeah.
And in her mind, she's going, yeah, this is why I told you 5 months ago when I bought these tickets to plan a dinner.
Yeah.
And so on my end, I'm like, it's over and done. But she didn't really communicate just how hurtful that was until like years later. And so, marriage tip, if your husband does something wrong, ladies, let him know.
Right then, yeah.
Because we're dense.
Yeah, we're
really
big,
dense.
stupid men, and we don't know these things. And I can't address a wrong that I don't know about.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And when that's built up for years, like, you know, there's no undoing that hurt at that
But
point.
like from a lady's view too, I think we put a lot of weight in like a little thing. So it's like, even though it was just like, hey, make a reservation, we can put a lot of that without saying. It's like an unspoken expectation.
That's what I was
But we
just
can
gonna
have
say.
a big, like, we're expecting something,
absolutely.
you know, when you
Absolutely.
didn't deliver
And-
anything.
Yeah.
So
We talk about
like,
that all the
can
time.
hurt.
The
Yeah.
unexpected expectations.
No,
like,
unspoken
Unspoken
expectations.
expectations,
Like
yeah.
letting, she
because
should've
I'm like,
emphasized it a
how
little
am
more.
I supposed to know?
Yeah.
How's this? But luckily,
And
that's-
those go unmet almost all the time.
Yeah,
Those
yeah,
unspoken
definitely.
expectations don't get met. But that was obviously not like
No, that
the
was
straw
just
that
one
broke
thing.
the
It was
camel's
just one
back.
thing.
But-
Right. Well, I to bring it back, because I think that's such an important point when you're talking about this idea of communication and vulnerability, right? So around year 7, Sarah and I went through like a really like nasty rough patch where like, yeah, it just, we got to the point where I was like, oh, this may not work. Like this might just be over. And that's about the time where I actually stepped down from the church plant that I was at, and we went over into the Harrisons. This is actually where I first, that's where I first met Tom, was actually at Church 212.
Awesome.
And that's like, I think our first meeting, I didn't know what to do with him. I was like, I don't know.
I'm the bass player dressed in black, standing in the back of the stage.
And is a typical bass player. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're just like, I don't know about this guy.
Yeah, no facial expression.
Yeah.
Just,
Oh.
I
But
might bob my head every now and then.
But I think it was like my first time like leading worship there. I was like, I'm getting coffee. I'll take a black coffee. And then it was game over from there. Yeah, it was game over. And then when he started working together at DCA, and it was all bad. But all that to say, year 7 was a rough one. And it was actually sitting with Mike Harrison, and he helped me to develop a phrase. This is slightly explicit, but I can bleep it out in the edit if we decide to. But I just, in our open and honest conversation with each other, we developed this phrase where Sarah and I, hey, we need to meet each other in our shit. And the idea is like, if this is going to work, I got to tell you everything. Like, everything, like the stuff that like I don't even allow God to touch, like, you know what I mean, like, just I'm gonna lay it all out. And if you're still willing to meet me in that mess, and vice versa, then this will work. Like, so it's just this idea of like we're constantly just meeting each other in the crap, but like essentially, in not such graphic terms, but that's the gospel. I mean, that's what Jesus did. He met us in our crap, like literally became flesh, right? Became a human being, went through what we went through, experienced what we experienced, all the pain, all the loss, all the anxiety even, and to meet us where we were at in our mess. Yeah. And like, if that's not practiced even within our, it's one thing to not practice that in your relationship with Jesus, like obviously that's a major, yeah. But in your marriage, if that's not practiced, like where you cannot be intimate on the level. And I think that's where intimacy even gets, where we misconstrued what intimacy is, because we automatically think intimacy is physical, like, right? We're talking physical intimacy, but intimacy is so much beyond that. Intimacy is like, can I be my real self? Even the dark, twisted things that go up on here, can I be honest with you? And do we have that safe place with each other where we can do that and go, I still love you. Yeah. Doesn't change how I feel about you. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
And it's that emotional intimacy that brings physical intimacy.
Oh, 100%.
And if you're focused on one and not the other, there's a breakdown in marriage, because you have to have both. And jumping in on that, what I teach to students is, to be successful in marriage, it's really two things. You've got to be committed to speaking and hearing truth in love. So it's if your wife says something to you that hurts you, and getting past that to try to understand what it is she's actually trying to say, and vice versa. Because men are the best at this. We say stupid stuff all the time without realizing like how hurtful it is.
All the time.
And we're doing our best, ladies. We really are. But as a wife, to stop and go, okay, I'm gonna get past the delivery.
How much do you weigh?
Trying to hear what the heart of the issue is. Yeah. Speaking and hearing the truth in love. And the second thing is commitment to commitment. Like if both parties are committed to doing those two things, you'll figure it out, whatever the issue is. Yeah. Whether that's, infidelity or financial issue, whatever. Just if we're going to speak and hear truth and love and be committed to commitment, our marriage will survive it. Yeah. but it takes both parties.
Yeah.
Yes.
So as
100%.
soon as there's a breakdown in one piece where, I'm going to speak truth, but it won't be in love,
Yeah.
or I'm not going to hear you. I love you, but I'm not going to hear what truth you're trying to give me. You get those breakdowns.
Yeah.
And so it takes both parties doing both those things.
So how would you say to to check in with your partner? What would you say to somebody that's going through it to check in mentally or things like that you would do now?
Yeah, I think it's the honesty piece of just being real. Like, this is my spouse, and we went through the ceremony, we got the rings, and we got this unconditional thing where, man, when I get home and I just am not having it and I pop off and you're like, what was that? I'm sorry. Like, I need a minute.
Yeah.
We know that.
Hey, I just need a minute and to own that on the back end. Just because we want to justify that more often than not. Like, I had a bad day, so I'm going to yell at you because that's what I need to do right now. And instead of circling back to go, yeah, I'm okay if you beat me up a little bit, but you need to circle back on the back end.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't you. It was all these other things going on.
Here's the other, and it's in that communication of just, it wasn't you. It was all this other stuff. I'm sorry I took it out on you.
Yeah.
Like,
I always have to remind him, I'm not mad at you. I'm mad at the situation. Like, whatever situation we're in, I'm not really, like, it might feel like I'm coming at you, but it's not you. Yeah. It's all these other things.
Yeah. And I'm one of those people that I'm, and you're the same way. We're so blind. Like, someone can be like, hey, I love you. Oh, does that mean they like me? Am I thinking too much about it? So, like, she had to be so straightforward. Hey, I love you. This is what we want. Okay.
But so even when I'm mad, I still have to be like,
yes.
I still love you.
So I go there.
I'm a little mad right now.
Well, I think that's our two-ness to a certain degree, right? Because
absolutely.
And that's what I tell people, because and without getting too into Enneagram, but just to relay this point that twos are, for males, is not a common thing. Like, it's not very common to have a male two.
The rest of them are machismos.
Yeah. Well, you got 3 males, 8 males, 6 males. Like, that's what I see a lot of that going on. But it's kind of rare when I run across another male two, and I'm like, oh dang. And so it's different because we have these weird emotions where it's like we do question. We're like, are you sure you're not mad?
Yeah.
Is everything okay?
Right.
Yeah.
What was that? Like, versus like, oh, you know what I mean? Versus like, you get home like, oh, she must have a bad day. Then you move on about your business.
No, I can just walk past him different. He's like, is everything okay?
Feel it. Oh, I can feel it.
And I'm just like, I'm mad at the dog. Honestly, I'm not even mad at you, but you just stop.
But I'm so like in my feelings.
He's all up in his feelings.
I hear you.
So for me, what I do is, like, if I call her up, the first thing I do is, hey, how are you doing? Honestly, and she'll be like, dogs barking nonstop, the kids screaming. I've got a child up here, so what do you need? What do you need?
Like, just
and
get
I'm
to
like,
it.
I'm like, okay, I'll get straight to the point. So it's done.
Yeah.
But I think that's how we constantly do it. Like, I know, or when I come home, I have a set thing because I know, like, when she's in her zone, she's in her zone. She's going to stay there. And then we'll unpack it at the end of the day. Here's what happened. Here's what I need. Here's this. And once I know, because that's the expectation, say it again, the unspoken expectations.
Yeah.
So she'll be like, hey, there's dishes that been over here. There's this. Oh, I didn't realize that was an issue. So now I just come in. Let's get it done. Let's do these kind of things to help set up for success as well. So
we have really good communication though, but when I was thinking about emotional intimacy and even physical intimacy, but the emotional part, I feel like that requires so much more trust sometimes than even physical intimacy, right? Like, emotional intimacy means that I'm trusting you with these emotions that I'm like ashamed to share in the moment, or like they're overwhelming and I feel bad I have to pass them on to you, but I can trust that you'll help me through it. So I think in marriage, making sure that you can trust that person completely,
100%,
and just being vulnerable so you can find out if that trust is there. Yeah. Otherwise,
it's going to sound like a weird phrase, but it's, to a certain degree, it's sacred ground. Like when I'm pretty sure I could speak for us 3 as males in here. Like, I mean, just the stuff that goes on here, the thought process, like the things, like, I mean, it can get dark, it can get weird, it can get, and like, it just, man, I thank God like Neuralink isn't a thing yet, because like I don't want anyone digging around in here, like, because it's like you'd lock me up, like you 5150 me yesterday, you know what I'm saying? Like there's no way. But to have someone in your life that you can have that sacred ground with, where it's like, this is safe.
Yeah.
Man, that's such a freeing thing in marriage. And like, back to your point of like, and man, that just makes her so much more attractive.
Yeah.
Like, just, I mean, not that she isn't already gorgeous, but like just the fact that it's like, man, I can truly be me. Like I can just be unapologetically me.
A beautiful thing, but it is hard.
Yeah.
It's scary.
Yeah.
Like it's in that vulnerability. Like, what are you going to do with this? This is going to come up later in an argument where, that's the stuff that stops us.
Was that something you guys went through in premarital? Like any of that like emotional intimacy, or being able to trust, or being able to just be yourself? Or was it more like, this is how we behave as Christians, so this is how your marriage should look as a Christian?
It was a lot. Honestly, the bulk of mine was like money. Because that was what was causing divorce.
That was like, you're talking about when you did it. It was, finances.
It was like mostly like, here's how to manage bringing your bank accounts together and whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm like, hey, that's great, cool. All
so
this
our bank looks good.
All these other, all these other expectations that we were both bringing in that neither of us really discussed with each other, and then there was disappointment on both sides. We didn't know what to do with that.
Yeah.
And no one was like, well, you should talk about it. And you know, the stigma around like counseling and things like that, people don't do it. They just try to figure out, y'all go to counseling.
Yes.
So,
or find a mentor, or find like a marriage mentor, or someone who can be like, hey, I like your marriage. I like the way it looks.
Yeah.
Like how authentic it is. Let's see how
figure it out on your own.
Yeah.
So if I do if I marry anybody that's listening, I want you to go talk to Tom before, and he's going to do
if you marry. I was like, what do you mean?
No,
I thought you meant like you were getting remarried.
Did you see that she
I looked at you like,
Speaking
what
of
are
divorce,
you talking about? Am I dying sometime soon that you don't know?
No, I would love.
Okay,
there's a joke there,
because you're
Kara,
ordained.
but I'm not going to do it today.
Oh my God.
I'll keep. There's a joke there though.
No, I feel like
I understand now.
all of my classes.
her hands all sweaty now.
Yeah, they are.
So I'm gonna go beat somebody up.
I feel like all of my classes, that's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Is I'm doing premarital counseling with the individuals, and sending them out into their stupid phase of college.
Yeah.
And hopefully there's moments where whatever seeds I've thrown at them, like, oh, this is what he was talking about.
Yeah.
Because it's humbling. It's humbling to have the ministry that I have. And, well, it's sad, but it's also humbling that, I have past students who going through divorce, I'm one of the first people they call. And, like, that's humbling because of how the Lord is using my own story. But it sucks. It's like divorce is so hard. It sucks really bad. And, do not recommend. And to see so many of my own students now who are experiencing that hardship, and one of the first things that most of them don't have children yet, so I'm like, hey, that's the bonus.
Right.
You were able to kind of clean slate this thing, and it hurts and it sucks, but you're not attached. Like I'm still attached here. And
which brings up a point here, because there's a factor here that I want to talk about because I know we got a little bit of a time limit today, but there's a factor here that I want to broach. And granted, I think this particular part of this conversation could be its own episode. It really, really could. And that's the aspect of when children are in the mix. Yeah. So I guess kind of a little bit, how did you navigate some of that with your daughter?
I got some great advice from an older sister who has been in public education for over 20 years. And not that, divorce is a non-Christian thing. Like, there's just as many broken homes at my school as there are anywhere. But she just gave me a really good piece of advice in basically thinking through, okay, right now your daughter's 7-8 years old. She doesn't have the capacity to understand what's going on, but at some point she will. There's going to be a piece where there's an emotional understanding and processing that hurt and processing those feelings. And it put me in a position to think through, okay, what decisions do I need to make now that when she gets there, she can look back and see how I showed up as a dad. And it very much changed my whole perspective and decision making in that whole process. Because number one, it made my relationship better with her mom, because it was there's no reason for me to be angry and do all that, because it's the kid who loses in that. When the parents are fighting and using kids as pawns to get back at their spouse, like all that does is hurt the kid.
Yeah.
And so it really helped me think through, okay, what is she gonna need to see 8, 9 years, 10 years from now when she can process this stuff of how I just loved and how, I talked well about her mother and making sure she was still able to see her mom. Like, kids need both parents.
Yeah.
They definitely don't need. Now, obviously, my situation, like, there wasn't an abusive situation. There wasn't.
Yeah.
Like,
I keep thinking back to that. I'm like, man, you had such a good, for you yourself, you were a good person. So it was probably a lot easier than it is in like unhealthy, like abusive.
And I'm very thankful that, my child's mom is a good mom, and she does her best there. And I'm thankful for that, because that's not everybody's situation. And obviously, if you have a partner that's just like, I'm out, this kid's yours now.
Yeah.
There's good and bad to that. But it's oftentimes, I think, divorced couples, in either the shame or the anger, frustration, whatever, they handle that by, well, I'm just going to find a new person. And then they get in this cycle of like boyfriends, girlfriends, in and out of the child's life, which is just as hurtful. And so, not that I haven't dated or whatever, like I have, but I've been very careful on like who I introduced to her. I think she's only met one person that I've dated in however many years it's been at this point, just because I'm trying to guard her and protect her in that. And that mindset really helped guide my decisions for a while there.
Yeah.
Of what does she need to look back and see that I did.
Yeah, I like that.
And that's super helpful.
Yeah. What is because I want to be careful how I say this. With some of our students, you hear some of the co-parenting horror stories that are coming from, not from the parents, but are coming from the kids who have to witness like some of these things. And, we actually just had a conversation not too long ago about a couple students that are on campus that are just, you explained a little bit of the dynamic that was kind of going on. I'm just like, that's rough.
Messy.
It's messy. Yeah. And so like, how are you navigating co-parenting?
Yeah, it takes a lot of communication. Honestly, it's kids first. Like it really, there have been so many times in my life since getting divorced where I set aside my own stuff for the sake of my child. It's like, her mom lives in San Diego and she's got friends there. She went to school there for a year, so there's like a life there.
Yeah.
And she wants to go experience that sometimes. And it doesn't always work out with the transportation and whatever. And so there have been times where, I canceled my weekend plans so I could drive my kid to San Diego. And that's not cheap. I have a truck that costs almost $200 to fill up with gas. And that's like a tank driving her there and back. But it's about her. Yeah. It's about meeting that need. And that's kind of my role as a parent, Yeah. And those horror stories happen when parents lose sight of that. When it becomes, well, I want to do this, like, I had whatever fun thing planned that I would rather do. So, kid, sorry, you're going to have to stay here this weekend. And like, that sucks.
Yeah.
And I don't do that for brownie points. Like, it's not, I'm going to be the better parent.
Right.
Which also some people do that in those games of, your mom dropped the ball, so I'm going to go ahead and, like, that's not appropriate either. You don't want to be talking to the kid about, those situations to make yourself look better as the parent. It's just, okay, hey, you need to go to this birthday party. It's easy to slide in. Your mom was supposed to take you, but now I'm going to. Like, that makes the kid feel like they're an inconvenience. And that's horrible. Like, how terrible is that for however old the kid is, to feel like, oh, like neither of my parents really want to do this.
No, that's so huge, because that's a perspective like that I think, people that are co-parenting need to hear, because again, that's some of the things that I hear from some of these students is like, I feel like an inconvenience. And it's like, not to say that the parents feel that way, but how it's being communicated.
And it's in that, sometimes it's body language. Sometimes it is the little frustrations that you say a little quip that the kid just perceives in a way that is sometimes unintended. Mm-hmm. So I'm very careful about what I say in front of her. And there's times that it's frustrating to have to set aside whatever it was I was going to do, but I can't let my child know that. It's not her fault. Like, she can't drive herself places. And the same is true on the reverse. I'm sure that I've done things that have frustrated her mom, and she's picked up the slack for me. And that's part of the deal, whether you're married or not. Like, you still have to make those decisions for your children. And that messiness really boils down to selfishness. And when you see those families that, if somebody gets remarried and then there's new children introduced to the story, it's like, you got to be really careful in that kind of stuff, that, whether it's a child from a previous marriage, like, they got to be equal with your new children. Cause that's something that I see all the time is, I'm doing all these things for my, new 3-year-old with my new husband or new wife or whatever. But now my middle schooler is kind of like, when do I get like, when do I get that attention? And it's hard as parents too, because a 3-year-old is very much different than an 11-year-old. Those are different.
They demand attention. Like 3-year-olds demand it in a completely different way than a middle schooler does, but recognizing they all need it.
And so much of it is unintended, but it's still hurt. Like, that's still a kid that's wondering, do my parents love me as much as, this other kid, and that's hard. And those are all the reasons that I think in the word where God says, I hate divorce. It's not that he hates the people that get divorced. He hates what it does to everyone.
The act of it.
Because there's so much fallout. There's so much hurt and pain that everyone endures in that process, that God's like, that's not what I want for my people. I want you to figure out in the hardship of how to endure, because in that perseverance and in that just kind of tough parts, that's where God can show up. And it's in our stubbornness, because the Lord's clear in the scripture, like, divorce is a you thing. Like, you wanted this, so I gave it to you in these circumstances, because you wouldn't leave. You keep coming to me like, it's really till death. Like, do I really have to stay on this person, God? And I was like, fine, if it's one of these things, then you can get divorced. And but I hate it, because it does it's devastating. But not to say that, the hope piece is that Romans 8, like, God uses all things for good. And so in my own story, my faith grew in ways that it wouldn't ever have without getting divorced. Like, I was closer to the Lord because of that than ever before in my life. And the way that God has used that to impact the kingdom has been tremendous. I wouldn't have chosen that, and I know that God didn't choose that for me. Like, we're two broken humans trying to figure this thing out, and unfortunately it didn't work out in our marriage. But God, in his faithfulness, met me there and grew me through that, and is now using that in a tremendous way. So it's humbling in that respect.
And I'm going to correct myself a little bit, because before you got here, as just without telling your story, just kind of give them just a slight background so they knew kind of what questions to ask and whatnot. And one of the things I had mentioned to you guys is like, this dude's ministry should be bigger, but I completely just blanked on this idea that he's, like you said it, you hit it right on the head. You're doing premarital counseling, like, you're intentional, like, now, because that, like how you said, it's your ministry now, not a ministry you wanted, but nevertheless, God redeeming it to now save future marriages before they even meet their future spouse, to walk in with something that you didn't have walking into your marriage.
It's just trying to be honest with the kids that it's like, it's hard. Like what your parents go through behind closed doors that they don't tell you about. Like there's some real stuff going on, and you need to understand that commitment is a level that you haven't experienced in any other kind of relationship because it's a different relationship. Yeah. And, for Kirk, when he told me my marriage was an idol, that was a year before we did get divorced. And in that year, I'd said that was kind of the best that our marriage had been, in my opinion, because I finally had it right. I had Christ first, and then my wife where she was supposed to be. And so it was great. And when everything kind of dissolved at that point, I was okay with it, which is weird to say. Like the Lord had just prepared my heart, because my mindset was, all right, if I end up divorced, I still have Jesus. And that, at the end of the day, that's what's important, that I have Christ at the end of this. And so however this gets used is however this gets used. And, I know the Lord has showed up for me. I know he has showed up for my ex-wife. I know he's shown up for my child. And that's the cool part, that God in his faithfulness, whatever brokenness we encounter, whatever issue we go through, he's faithful to meet us there and grow us through it if we would seek his face and his kingdom. Because, it was in the fall of a school year that this all happened to me. And then it was kind of over Christmas, news kind of got out, and I was dreading coming back to campus, because I'm like, I don't want people's pity. I don't want, the looks of like, what happened? Oh, there he is, and that was all my fear. And, getting back to my campus community, there was nothing but love, nothing but just like, hey, like, we know you're going through some stuff, but there wasn't like, hey, tell us, or, oh, we're mad, or, there was none of that. And it was just a very healthy, like, I was teaching a Bible class at the time, and Ephesians 5 comes up like 2 weeks after we get back to school. I remember talking to my chaplain and going, how am I supposed to teach a class on marriage when my marriage is in utter failure right now? Like literally signing papers.
Was Gordon the chaplain at the time? Yeah.
And so, James Gordon, the chaplain, he just looks at me. He's like, do you have any idea how powerful that is for your students to just hear you preach the word? And again, it was another one of those just truth to my core that was like, okay, all that fear, anxiety. And I just stood up and taught Ephesians 5. And so a lot of like what I'm saying now came from that. It's not, Tom should have been in bed eating ice cream, feeling sorry for himself. But it was the power of the Spirit that got me out of bed every day and got me going to campus and got me in front of kids to just go, hey, like this thing's hard. And it takes a lot of Jesus, and it takes a lot of trust. It takes a lot of love. And that ministry was born out of that. Just it's the Lord. It ain't me. Like I'm a mess just like any other guy. But the Lord is faithful to
100%. I got one more thing, and then we can wrap this up. But I was just thinking about just our listeners, not only wanting to minister to them, but give them an opportunity to minister. Yeah. So what would you say to, like, for those who are friends with, someone that is walking through a divorce right now? Like, what is something like that, in case in point, like now when I talk to people, like, who they have a friend who just, lost a spouse, the first thing I'll tell them, like, don't hit them with a bunch of Bible verses. Just go shut your mouth and go love on them. Like, that's literally my first thing. Yeah, literally just go love on them. And I'm going to throw this in here real quick. I don't know if you guys know, but like Tom was the first at my house when Sarah passed away. Yeah, Tom and you, Rach, and then I think it was Colin. Or no, Colin came with the Garrisons, but yeah, you and Rach were at my door. This guy, so like that literally is a prime example of that. But again, back to what I was saying, what advice would you give to those who are friends to those walking through divorce currently?
Yeah, I think it's understanding as a friend, you don't need to pick sides. So like, if you're mad at whatever the situation, that's fine, but you don't need to bring that up. It's not about you. Like, I had so many people like, how could she? And like, that's not helpful. Like, you don't know my role in this. Like, I know that I wasn't a perfect husband. So, you know, on the outside, it was shocking for people, but internally, I'm like, no, our marriage has sucked for a while. Like, y'all just didn't know it because we just kept it to ourselves and whatever. And I don't need that. I don't need you to be mad at her for me. And it was one of the, like, I know when you were going through it, there were plenty of times on your back patio where it was just like you going, I don't know what I need. Like, I need this. I just need to hang out with a buddy. And I would say the same is true of somebody going through a divorce. Like, that's a very important relationship that is breaking. And a lot of times is out of their control. You feel out of control. And so just being present, and I think lending your ear without inserting your own emotional experience into their situation, because it's not happening to you. It's not your business. And if there's an opportunity to relate or whatever, let the other person bring that up in conversation, to where now it's like, don't make it about you. Don't hijack the conversation. Be like, well, let me tell you about my experience. Yeah. They don't need to hear that. They just need you to kind of be there and understand, like, I'm hurting right now, and sit with them in that. And I feel like, you know, our situations are obviously death and divorce are not the same, but there's some similarity.
I would say a lot. I would say there's a lot more similarities than there are differences.
And there's mourning.
And so in that, again, it was an opportunity for me to kind of be present for you in your situation, because having gone through that, it was like, no, I'm just going to bring a 6-pack. We're going to hang out on your patio and we're just going to sit. And whatever you want to talk about, this is what we'll talk about. And it's just that. It's just, sometimes you just need somebody to be present with you and not bring it up, because you end up talking about it so much, because everybody wants to know. Like, people want to know what happened, and you know, we're nosy and whatever. And it's like, man, I'm so tired of telling the story.
No. And you taught me, Tom, like, the importance of that a friend is not someone to fix. A friend is someone to love. And it's not my job to fix them. And I think that's oftentimes, like, when situations like that happen, I just want to come and try to fix the situation. But honestly, it's like, no, I don't need you to fix anything. I need you. I just need you here. And like, some of the stuff, like we talked on the back porch, like some stuff, it was like, there was moments where, like, I just needed to and other times just nonsense. I just need to laugh. I just want to laugh and talk about stupidity. Like, and that's what it is. And no, that's awesome. Tom, like, bro, so now I'll fanboy. No, I'm kidding. No, honestly, man, I appreciate the vulnerability of this conversation, man. Absolutely. Like I said, because I feel like this is something that, again, there's such a stigma to it, and it's such a shame aspect. And not to say it's not heartbreaking, but I don't think there needs to be a shame aspect here. No. There's hope here. There's power for redemption. And I would even go as far as to say is, like, if you're going through, you know, like that divorce process, like right now, whether it's like you guys haven't signed the paperwork, it's like, man, just keep trusting God. Like, as crazy as that sounds, like, just keep trusting God, because God does the miraculous. You don't know. You just don't know. And I think you just gave some nuggets for people to chew on here for a minute, man.
And I would just throw one more thing out. Like, if you are going through a divorce, the worst thing that you can do is try to reach back and figure out, like, why, what could I have done different? Because that's a fruitless pursuit. Like, thinking back on my own marriage and being like, man, what are the things I could have done different to not have this outcome? Don't do that to yourself. Like, just the reality is you're where you're at. So what can you do now? Like, what are the things to unpack and fix now? You can't go back and fix the stuff from 5, 6, 10 years ago, whatever it is. But it's work on now. What are we going to do moving forward to think through, how can we repair this at this moment? Or if we can't, then what do I need to do on my end to make sure I did everything that I could to keep this thing right? Because that'll clear your conscience. Just like knowing I did everything I could on my end, because it takes two people. So if one person's out, it's kind of like, all right, that's not what I want,
Yeah.
but I did what I could.
Yeah.
And so now I can be cool with that. Just throwing that out.
Yeah.
It was good.
Tom, I love you, buddy.
Yeah,
Seriously, man.
thank you.
Thank you for being an amazing friend to me, for constantly setting an example, not just in teaching, not just in, I'm talking overall life, bro. You've just been a huge example for me, man. So I appreciate our friendship. And I'm sorry I didn't invite you to the dating episode, bro.
It still hurts.
We'll do another one. Dating like 2.0.
Dating 2.0.
Yeah, we can find out where Alex is now and, you know, everything.
I'll put it out there. I have a girlfriend.
You would. You were on the dating episode.
You would.
That's I'm still single. This man's on the dating episode. Now he's got a girlfriend.
He is someone's Lord Farquaad.
I am someone's Lord Farquaad. Yes, sir. But anyway, oh man. Well, Tom, just real quick, if someone was, one of our listeners, without giving out too much personal information, what would be a good way to maybe get a hold of you, as far as like if someone has questions or just wants to reach out and just to grab some advice from you?
So yeah, you can call Alex Sanchez at No, if you're watching this podcast or seeing it on Instagram or whatever, just shoot Narrow Door a DM. They can get you in touch with me.
All right, fair enough.
awesome.
Beautiful, beautiful.
I already have some people I'm going to send this to. This was golden.
Oh, yeah.
This was so good. I was sitting here quiet most of the time.
Yeah.
I know. I like listening to it. It was
yeah.
good. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime.
And then next time I'm going to have him read a book for me because his voice is so calming.
telling you,
I'm
dude.
like, dude, this is
Oil on leather.
I put at least 2 kids to sleep every class. They're just like,
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it has been an amazing time. Again, Tom, we thank you so much for just coming down and just being open and honest with us, brother. And I hope for all of our listeners and our viewers that you can take this and just instead of experiencing shame, that you can walk away with some hope, knowing that God is a God of redemption. And with that, as always, the Narrow Door. You can hit us up at thenarrowdoor.org. You can hit us up on our Instagram account. Again, every second Saturday of the month, for those of you that have any type of food crisis, every second Saturday of the month from 9 to 11 o'clock here at the warehouse, come by. We'll make sure that you get set up. If you are in an emergency, please stop by at any time, Tuesday through Friday, from 8 to 12. And that's a wrap, ladies and gentlemen. It's been fun.
Yeah, if you guys want prayer, honestly, info@thenarrowdoor.org. We'd love to pray for you.
100%.
We'd love to connect you with someone maybe near you that can pray with you as well. But we love you guys.
Love you. That's a wrap.
All
Later.
right.